What's going on, everyone? So it is that time of the week, as I said in my previous spoiler videos. Tuesday, Thursdays when we get the new leaders. We got a brand new leader, an insane new double aspect Palpatine unit, and a bunch of other things to talk about. So we're gonna dive right into it and talk about some of the new cards. Guys, if you want to check out any of these cards and pick them up yourself, I have a TCG player link in the description down below. You guys should use that. Helps me out, helps you out. And also big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. Helps me create videos and supports me. So big thank you to you all. But let's dive into it and start us off with, like I said, the double aspect Palpatine unit. Okay, so really sweet 4-cost ground unit in double cunning. Absolutely love the choice here in a double aspect. I could definitely see this being a double command, but I think double cunning makes a lot of sense. Seeing the Emperor Palpatine units being aggression, villainy, that kind of form where he's, electrocuting Luke and going with that direction makes sense. You could also say like Darth Sidious in the Clone Wars would have been aggression more so. The command version with the leader that's kind of the Emperor Palpatine leader makes a lot of sense. The Chancellor Palpatine, love the double cunning. Anyways, 2/6 Republic official. Each token unit you create enters play ready, and on attack, if a unit left play this phase, creates a clone trooper token. So first off, any sort of double aspect card, the first thing I think of is, are you going to be playing this outside of the double cunning decks? This to me does not seem like a card you're really interested in playing for 6 resources, okay? 2/6 body, not good at all at 6 resources. Not to mention the effect that it's providing doesn't do anything unless you already are doing stuff afterwards, or you potentially are trying to build out this situation later on in the game where you're going to kind of control the game and then later on make a bunch of tokens. You really want to be creating tokens after Palpatine comes down. And if you're playing this for 6 resources, you probably already created those tokens. So you really want to play this in a double cunning deck. Now, the question also is, because it's double cunning, where would this fit in terms of leaders? And this is something that I think is a little bit more interesting because we haven't seen a cunning heroism leader from the new set yet. And I say yet because the one we're talking about today is a cunning heroism. And the other cunning heroism leaders that we have are like Jin, we have Mandalorian, we have Lando, all of which seem pretty bad. So the heroism, at least from what I've seen, isn't really all that exciting, especially with like the clone trooper aspect of it to make like these super powerful ready tokens. You could do OG Han, and that could be interesting because you could potentially create the tokens on turn 3 with 4 resources and then play Palpatine a turn earlier on turn 2 with the extra resource. However, for villainy, right, you've got like Boba Fett, you've got General Grievous. Now, they don't have specific synergies with clone trooper tokens all that often, and the tokens that you're normally going to be creating are going to be battle droid tokens. So I don't know if that's nearly as exciting either, especially since Chancellor Palpatine does have that Republic and official tag. So it's more likely going to be fitting in the heroism style of decks. So I'm not really sure what leader like screams out to me. Any sort of card that's going to be creating tokens after the fact seems a lot more exciting. Like if I think about this with like, let's say you could, but like Captain Rex, for example. Well, suddenly you get Rex and you get some power that's immediately readied up. And that to me is the stronger portion of Chancellor Palpatine. There's also the part where, yeah, if you just get a unit that's been defeated this phase, suddenly you're getting a clone trooper token. You're getting a 2/2 on attack, which is pretty nice, right? A 4 resource 2/6 plus a 2/2 would be pretty solid in other card games for the most part. So I'm not 100% on this card. I think that we still need to see more clone trooper synergy in order for this card to be really strong. Because again, it's not about like just generating a bunch of bodies or anything like that. It's about generating specifically token units to get value out of this first ability at all. It might just be good enough, however, with that on attack trigger, if you create a couple different clone trooper tokens, maybe that's good enough just to see some value out of Emperor Palpatine, or Chancellor Palpatine, that is. But let's talk about the next one here. As I said, we got a couple different cards to talk about. This was going to be a 2-cost event in aggression, villainy, defeat a friendly unit if you do deal 4 damage to a unit. So this is obviously kind of doubling up on the exploit strategy, but I don't think this card's very good at all. And I know some people are like, oh, a 1 resource less cost open fire. That's interesting, right? But I think open fire is miles better. First off, open fire is neutral, so it's not villainy or heroism, and you're not really going to be playing self-destruct for 4 resources unless you specifically care about defeating a friendly unit. And basically every single situation, this is not going to be a bonus for you, as we don't really have these situations where when defeated you do something amazing to the point where you'd want to kill that unit every single time. There are some situations, like we saw that droid that when you defeat you get +2/+2 for something, but that seems like a very niche scenario. So I don't think defeating a friendly unit is going to be a bonus. Most of the time it's going to be a negative, like 95% of the time. And you have to be defeating a unit all to just get 4 damage to something, which is just a 1 resource reduction on open fire. And mind you, most decks don't even play open fire even when you can. And even if you are a deck that does want to play open fire, usually you're not a deck that is able to defeat friendly units. You really want to be defeating like a battle droid token, for example. And if you're defeating a battle droid token, you probably are playing those battle droid tokens for your exploit cards. And you don't really want to be spending those battle droid tokens as a 2 resource cost reduction for other exploit cards on a 1 resource cost reduction for self-destruct. To me, this seems like kind of a misplaced card. I don't really see the value in this too much. Of course, there's, oh, well, what happens if I want to play 6 copies of open fire? Maybe. But again, that's a deck that probably isn't that great at using self-destruct because you're now playing 6 different events in your deck that specifically deal damage to opponents' units, but you're also playing one of the events that requires you to have a ton of friendly units that you want to be defeating. So ideally a bunch of battle droid tokens. So I don't really see a place for this card all that much. Maybe if we get some more important when defeated triggers, this will be a more powerful card. Next up, we've got a really cool rare here in Luminara Unduli, brand new Jedi. It's a 7 cost ground unit in Vigilance Heroism. It's a 4/9. It's got the Force Jedi Republic tags. It has coordinate grit, so you just get grit when you have 3 or more, or when you control 3 or more units. So 2 other than Luminara. And then when played, you choose a base, you heal 1 damage from it for each unit you control. So first off, 7 cost unit means that you cannot ECL this out. So if you're thinking about playing like an Obi-Wan ECL deck, Luminara can't get that massive attack in and try to get a bunch of grit stacking or anything like that. Not to say that her attack trigger is all that great. Remember, it's a when played trigger to heal a bunch of damage. But if I look at this card and I'm thinking, what am I playing on 7 resources normally in Vigilance Heroism? Luke Skywalker, right? So you kind of have to compare those 1-to-1 because also Luke Skywalker has very similar tags, right? If I just pull them up, this guy's going to have the Force, the Jedi, and Rebel tags. Let me just pull up Luke here. Let me just show him on screen. So you can see Force, Jedi, Rebel tag. So very similar tag. So you really have to care about the Republic tag specifically, or the immediate heal on your base has to be important, or the toughness and potentially getting extra value over the course of a game has to be more important in terms of combat value. I don't think Luminara stacks up against Luke Skywalker well at all. Now, I know some people are like, well, why don't you talk about Twin Suns? Why don't you talk about all this other stuff? There are viable options if you want to talk about other formats like Twin Suns, or if you're like, Luke's just too expensive for me, I want to play something else. Would Luminara kind of fit in that 7 resource play spot? I think so. I think if you are trying to be going for this Republic, make a couple tokens, survive in the late game, you get Luminara down, she kind of acts as like pseudo redemption, where you heal a little bit and you get this body on the battlefield that's ideally helping to control the field. Maybe you get something going there. And mind you, the coordinate grit ability can be activated later on. So like, let's say you go into combat, you defeat a 4/4 like a K2SO. Suddenly she's got 5 damage or 4 damage on Luminara, and you eventually play another unit which triggers coordinate, which triggers the grit. you just get an extra 4 points of power on Luminara at that point because she already has that 4 damage. You do not need to deal the damage while she has grit active. It's just straight up, you get extra power when you have damage on the unit. And so that could be interesting. I'm not sure this when played trigger is going to heal you more than like 3 to 4 at the maximum. I just don't really see if you're playing this style of deck with the vigilance, heroism, get to the late game, then kind of overvalue your opponent. I can't see it really healing more than 3 to 4. 3 to 4 is a pretty standard amount, especially when I consider something like Rey, where you play a unit, maybe a Sentinel, you play your leader, and then you play Luminara on the following turn, and that's where you get the 3 heal. But again, if you're just considering straight up power level, Luke just seems way better because there's so many scenarios where your units are going to die and then Luke just kills something when it comes down and oftentimes will heal more than Luminara. And it has way more power. And that extra power is extremely, extremely important. For example, if your opponent plays a Wrecker ECL, suddenly Luke just trades with it where a Luminara actually ends up dying, taking some damage to your base, and Wrecker is still sitting around, which is a really bad thing. Again, if you have grit, I suppose that's not going to happen, but chances are you probably won't. I'm not sure what to consider about Luminara in terms of what I would be doing with her in the current meta. I think you'd really have to take advantage of the Republic synergy, or you'd really have to take advantage of the heal when she's played, to where, hey, I need that heal immediately, whereas Luke's heal is kind of forced into attacking, so you might have to wait to the point where you can't wait any longer, and that's where Luminara is a little bit better than Luke. But anyways, let me know what you think about Luminara in the comment section down below. Next up, we got Wolfpack Escort. We got a 1-cost space unit in Cunning Heroism. It's a Republic vehicle fighter. It's a 2/1, and when playing, you may return a friendly non-leader, non-vehicle unit to its owner's hand. So the first thing I thought about with the Wolfpack Escort is a lot of people are talking about, oh, I waylay my unit back to my hand when someone puts like an entrenched or a bounty on it. And I could see Wolfpack Escort being used as sort of a sideboard option to go ahead and return a unit that's on the ground to your hand to get rid of one of those crucial bounties or something like that. Chances are that's a very, very minute synergy and isn't going to come up in a vast majority of your games. The question is, when do you want this card? Because you don't have to return a friendly non-leader, non-vehicle unit. You can also just play this as a 1-cost 2/1 Cunning Heroism space unit. I don't think that's necessarily good enough. In Rey, yellow, I suppose, it's a 3/2 for 2 resources, which can be somewhat reasonable. This to me seems like a pretty relatively mediocre unit, but we did see some use out of TIE Fighter, and this is just the same stats as TIE Fighter, but with arguably more to it because it has the respective tag, whereas TIE Fighter had Imperial, this one has Republic, and this one has the extra when played line. So I could see this being played in a more aggressive, space-oriented Cunning Heroism deck, but I'm not 100% convinced that this is good enough. 2/1s are pretty bad in general. They just die to so many different things and kind of just randomly get killed, especially with the new kind of hate towards small units coming in set 3. I think this is going to struggle a lot. But last card we're going to talk about today is a brand new Cunning Heroism leader, and that is Quinlan Vos. I gotta say, guys, some of these leaders that they pick out, I am very, very happy about because they're under my kind of minor characters or characters that people don't know about. I'm looking back at like set 2. The characters that I wouldn't have expected are characters like supposedly Dr. Afra or like Fennec Shand. I wouldn't have expected them to do a character on it because not many people actually know about these characters. But Quinlan Vos is absolutely sweet to see as a leader here. When you play a unit with this guy as your leader, you may exhaust Quinlan Vos. If you do, you can deal 1 damage to an enemy unit that costs the same as the play unit, and he has Cunning Heroism. Force, Jedi Republic are the tags. He flips for 5 resources as a 3/7, very solid stat line. And when you play a unit, you may deal 1 damage to an enemy unit that costs the same or less than the played unit. So let's think about this. Normally, in a game of Star Wars Unlimited, you play a unit, your opponent plays a unit, and you play units along the curve. So there's a good chance that like 40-50% of the time, you actually get this trigger off the front side of Quinlan Vos. Dealing random 1 damage to enemy units half the time that you play a unit doesn't seem particularly amazing to me. However, being a 5 to flip 3/7 is pretty good, and dealing 1 damage to things that cost same or less than the played unit is exciting, especially considering you do not have to exhaust the leader to get this trigger. So what I'm thinking about this is, let's say your opponent plays a small unit and you have a couple of like slightly larger but still smaller units. You can play multiple of those in a turn and deal like 1 to 2 damage to 3 damage to 4 damage on a single unit, which could be a little bit more exciting. But again, that's a little bit of a rare scenario. I think overall, Quinlan Vos, the thing I'm most excited about is the fact that he's a 5 to flip 3/7 with the Force Jedi Republic tags. That to me could potentially be interesting. And I don't think any other card really like screams out as something that's going to survive as easily. We do have Ahsoka, who's a 5 to flip 3/6 that could become a 5/6 with the Force Jedi Republic tags, and that's also why I'd be excited about Ahsoka. So these 5 to flip pretty tanky leaders seem pretty good to me, and just because they have all the synergy pieces that you're looking for within these decks. I don't actually think that the trigger of the 1 damage to something is going to come up all that often and actually be somewhat meaningful, especially considering unlike Cad Bane, who you're able to trigger basically every single turn, you're going to be relying on your opponent to play something similar to you in terms of curving out, which is a lot weaker. Or again, Cad Bane, you just play your own deck and you get to deal damage. This is, you have to match your opponent and deal damage, and that's a lot weaker. Even though you get to choose, it's not really choosing, so it's kind of similar. That said, I am pretty excited for this just because of the 5 to flip leader. But that's going to be all the cards that we got today, guys. What do you think about the new legendary in Chancellor Palpatine? What do you think about Self-destruct? Is it actually going to take a couple spots out of open fire? Luminara Unduli, can she actually compare against Luke Skywalker? Wolfpack Escort, is this the new TIE fighter? Can we go all space in Cunning Sabine? I don't know. And Quinlan Vos, are you going to be using this guy as one of your more exciting leaders from set 3? Let me know in the comment section down below. I am pretty excited about Chancellor Palpatine trying to build like some sort of token aggro tempo deck with that guy. So maybe something there. That said, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoy, and I will see you for the next one.